Coming up today here on the Raiders Report, Raiders OC candidates if the silver and black hire Klint Kubiak. My name's Mitchell Renz. You're watching the Raiders Report, and these are the top 10 candidates that I believe the silver and black could hire if they end up hiring Klint Kubiak. Raise your hand out there if you've wondered. Mitch, Klint's an offensive-minded head coach. Who's he going to bring in to help get this offense on track with Fernando Mendoza, Ashton Genty, Brock Bowers? I know I personally have. And if you've thought about that exact same question, I hope that you love today's program. Let's go to the very first candidate here that I believe Klint could try to bring in. It's going to be Andrew Janocko, who's currently the quarterback's coach for the Seattle Seahawks. And he followed Kubiak to the Minnesota Vikings, where he was there with them in 2019 and 2021. Then ended up following him to the New Orleans Saints in 2024, and now is currently with him in Seattle in 2025. I'm going to say this a lot, probably the more and more we talk about Kubiak, but Mendoza, when he said it, I got to be the best version of myself. If you're hiring Klint, you're hiring him to be the best version of himself. And the fact that Janocko has been with them at so many different stints, there's a reason why you're hiring Kubiak. And it's because he's had Janocko tied to his hip. Another guy that I actually do think you should really try to consider to bring in for an offensive coordinator is Jake Peetz, who is the pass game coordinator for Seattle. And he's worked underneath names like Nick Saban, Sean McVay, Mike McDonald. He was also with the Raiders in 2015, 2017, which I know you guys like, as a quarterback coach, an assistant quarterback coach, and senior assistant leading up to that final quarterback coach job in 2027. The reason why that's important is because I would say the best quarterback that I've personally seen wearing a Raiders uniform, again, I'm a newer Raider fan. Yeah, Rich Gannon early on when he won the MVP at 37, but Derek Carr at 2015 and 2016, it's been the best Raiders quarterback that I've seen, and Jake Peetz was a part of that process. Let's go to another potential OC candidate here for the Raiders. It's going to be Darrell Bevell, quarterback coach of the Miami Dolphins. He's also the pass game coordinator since 2022. He does have some OC experience, and I'm not going to lie, it didn't always go the best way where he was in Minnesota. Seattle's where he had by far the most success. Then the Detroit Lions and the Jacksonville Jaguars. The other reason, though, why I'm going to bring him up is he does have some interim head coach experience with the Lions and with the Jags. And if you're going to bring in a first-time head coach like Klint Kubiak, maybe you also decide to bring in a guy like Darrell Bevell. So here's going to be a question for you, and it's a multi-million-dollar question. I say that because last year the Raiders hired Chip Kelly. They made him the highest-paid offensive coordinator in the National Football League. He was making $2 million at Ohio State. They tripled the salary. They gave him $6 million. So my question to you is, who are you hoping that the Raiders hire to be their next offensive coordinator to pair with Klint Kubiak? Let's go to another name here that I'm going to bring up. It's going to be Frank Smith, and he's the Dolphins offensive coordinator as it stands right now. Maybe not. They did just bring in Jeff Hafley, so they're probably going to move on from him. Raiders tight end coach from 2018 to 2020, where he also did a lot of work with Darren Waller. And Waller was an absolute monster who came out of nowhere, 9 touchdowns, had over 1,000 yards, and he really showed that he could be a dominant tight end. Also, got a lot of offensive line coaching experience. And if you're going to bring in an OC, I need to know that you can work with tight ends. I need to know that you can work with offensive line. And whether you like Frank Smith or not, I do know that this is a name that Raider Nation does vibe with. Let's go to another name here. It's going to be Josh McCown, quarterback's coach of the Minnesota Vikings. And he was the quarterback coach for Carolina in 2023. He's been with Minnesota the past 2 seasons. He also played quarterback in the NFL from 2002 to 2020. So if you want somebody that you can bring in that understands the game and can talk to players, I actually think McCown's one of the better quarterback coaches in the NFL. I understand this past year in Minnesota with J.J. McCarthy did not go well, but I'm also was never a J.J. McCarthy believer. I was a Sam Darnold believer. And Darnold with Kubiak, I wonder if both of those guys could meet on some sort of common ground and be like, all right, well, what do we do with Darnold in 2024 with Minnesota? What did you do with Darnold in 2025? Can we take what we learned and implement that with Fernando Mendoza? And that's got to be one of the reasons why you consider Josh McCown. We got some more coaches coming up here in just a moment. And a coach from Indiana. I know, Who's the Indiana coach going to be? I'm going to tell you who we might be able to bring in as an OC. Quite frankly, out of all the names on this list, it's probably the least likely out of them all. But you know what? It's all good. It's about having a good time on this show. Also, PrizePicks is about having a good time. And if you want to get started with America's #1 fantasy sports app out there, then download the PrizePicks app today. Make sure that you use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. If you're like Mitch, what am I going to use that $50 in lineups for? I recommend you using it on the big game because it's almost here. And there's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than PrizePicks, where it always feels good to be right. And since the big game is right around the corner, that also means it's your last chance to get into the football action before next season. So close the season out right with PrizePicks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. My eyes are going to be glued on Klint Kubiak. My eyes are going to be glued on this offense. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to root for Klint. I'm going to root for Seattle, and I'm going to root for the more on my PrizePicks lineup. You got to take advantage of the Drake May. 0.5 passing yards. If he doesn't hit that, I don't really know what type of game we're getting ourselves into. But JSN, Kenneth Walker, Sam Darnold, I want to see the more on these players as well because you think about how I want to see Klint use Ashton Genty. It's the way that they're using Kenneth Walker right now. I want to see points up on the board, and I also want to see some money in my pocket. So use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. I hope I'm right. No matter what, though, I'm going to have a good time. You can't really sit down in today's day and age, put some money down with that opportunity to put some money in your pocket and have that guaranteed entertainment. That's why I love PrizePicks. Let's go to Chandler Whitmer, quarterback coach here for Indiana. He coached Fernando Mendoza and was the co-OC and quarterback coach for the Hoosiers. He does have some NFL and college football experience, which you can see. He was with Atlanta in 2024. In 2021 to 2023, he was with the Chargers. You know Mark Davis loves AFC West experience. Was with Clemson in 2020, so he was able to learn underneath some good minds. And then with Ohio State in 2019. Again, this is more of a, can you at least get somebody in the room that's worked with Fernando Mendoza? Out of all the names, this is the least likely. Let's go to another name here. It's going to be Nate Scheelhasse. And I'll be very honest with you. If the Arizona Cardinals end up hiring Mike LaFleur to be their head coach, Scheelhasse is going to be the next offensive coordinator of the Los Angeles Rams. But maybe there's a chance that Mike LaFleur ends up staying with the Rams, and then you ended up bringing in Scheelhasse in for an interview for the head coaching gig. I personally think that the only reason why you brought him in was to really look and see, would you be interested in an offensive coordinator job? But he's been underneath Sean McVay for the past 2 seasons. I'm a Penn State guy. Y'all know that. And I'm a big, big Matt Campbell fan. But Matt Campbell did a lot of beautiful things at Iowa State. He also did a lot of beautiful things with Brock Purdy when he was there with the Cyclones. The Raiders did interview him on Friday the 16th. So to me, if you're able to get Kubiak and you're able to bring in Scheelhasse, that is a dynamic duo at the offensive position for your coaches. Let's go with somebody who's a little bit older. It's been a name that I've mentioned before on this program, Frank Reich. And he does have some head coaching experience, which I do think is important for a first-time coach in Kubiak who will be calling the plays. He was the interim head coach for Stanford in 2025, also was the head coach in Carolina in 2023, and then he was with the Colts from 2018 to 2022. He played quarterback in the NFL from 1985 to 1998. Also a lot of OC experience. To me personally, I know that some of the Raiders owners actually have a really good relationship with Frank Reich through him in Stanford right now. That's why you always hear the name David Shaw always getting brought up around Raiders circles. But he has some solid OC experience. Reich, to me, is a better offensive coordinator and a better offense assistant head coach that you could bring in for somebody like Klint Kubiak. Coming up next here, though, I got 2 very, very interesting offensive coordinator candidates for the Silver and Black if they decide to hire Klint Kubiak. And I think I've had my fingers crossed this entire show because you guys know Klint's been my #1 overall candidate. I'm glad you guys can't see underneath the table because there's a lot more going on than just my fingers being crossed. And here's why. I don't want you guys to miss my awesome Raiders event. Chugs and I, we're going to be out in San Jose, California. I've never been out there. I know there's a lot of people that always show up and show out here on this show, and I think I'm just as excited to meet all of y'all as you are to meet Chugs and I. Friday, February 6th from 7 to 10 p.m. Call to reserve your spot. If you are a fan of this show, if you're a real one, if you believe that the Raiders Report has the best community on YouTube, I expect to see you there. Let's go to a very interesting candidate. It's Kliff Kingsbury, former OC of the Washington Commanders, and he was there from 2024 to 2025 because he picked this job over the Raiders. Y'all remember the Raiders, Kliff Kingsbury, Antonio Pierce, Tom Telesco, they had a verbal agreement that ended up falling through the cracks. And then Kliff ended up taking the job in Washington. He wanted to work with Jaden Daniels. Well, guess what, Kliff? We got the number 1 overall pick now. If you want to come here and work with Fernando Mendoza, you'll be able to do it. I'll be very honest. I've been told by sources that there are some people inside of that Raiders organization that don't fully trust Kliff. And there's a part of me that goes, well, if you're going to try to rebuild and you're going to try to get this thing on track, there needs to be confidence from top to bottom. There needs to be trust. If you don't got trust, I don't really think you got a lot. But he was the Texas Tech head coach from 2013 to 2018. And if you were interested in Davis Webb, Kliff Kingsbury also worked with him. Also was the Arizona Cardinals head coach from 2019 to 2022. I don't think he did a very good job of being a head coach, but you can't deny that he knows X's and O's. And sure, Kliff's a little bit of a dick. No doubt about it. You can't deny it to me. But when you are hiring a first-time head coach, I do think it's important to bring people in who have head coaching experience. And he has it in college and at the NFL level. Let's go to my final name here on my I put Kliff and Klint's names together. There's a lot of K's flowing around. On my final name here with Klint Kubiak, it's going to be Tanner Engstrand, who was just actually fired by the New York Jets, former offensive coordinator. The reason why I'm bringing him up is he does have some OC experience with the Jets this past season, but bad organizations stay bad for a reason, right? How are you going to fire this guy, but then you're going to keep Aaron Glenn? Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And that offense, when you're leading it with Justin Fields, it's not going to be very good. DC Defenders OC. Also, he was there in San Diego from 2011 to 2017. I like that connection because that's actually one of the first spots that Jim Harbaugh ended up getting his head coaching gig. But here's the number one reason why the Raiders would be interested. He worked underneath Ben Johnson in Detroit from 2020 to 2024. Tom Brady's number one candidate last season was Ben Johnson. And maybe a bit of a cherry on top was a Michigan offensive analyst in 2018. So one more time here are my top 10 candidates to be the Raiders offensive coordinator if the Silver and Black hire Klint Kubiak. Whether you want to go with somebody from Seattle, whether you want to go with somebody like a Kliff Kingsbury, no matter what, there are a lot of good options, and it's extremely important because you need to capitalize with Fernando Mendoza, Ashton Genty, Brock Bowers. If you appreciate this show, make sure you take a screenshot. Don't be afraid to tag me on social media. And as always, I'm at Mitchell Renz 365.